go for it then. Donc, Shanie est une artiste visuelle basée à Montréal. Elle a complété une maîtrise en sculpture à la University of Texas at Austin en 2019, où elle a reçu plusieurs prix tels que le UMLAUF Prize et la Confess Summer Fellowship. Oh, there it is. There we go. Dans ses œuvres, elle réfléchit à la nature d'un matériau ainsi qu'à son évaluation dans l'espace et le temps. Ses recherches se cristallisent autour d'une forme qui devient un motif d'émancipation poétique. Elle a présenté son travail lors de plusieurs expositions individuelles, notamment au Umlauf Sculpture Garden and Museum in Austin, à Circuit Art Actuel à Montréal, à la Courtyard Gallery à Austin et à la Maison des Arts de Laval. Elle a aussi exposé à Sweet Pass Sculpture Park à Dallas, à la Foire en Art Actuel de Québec, au Visual Art Center à Austin et à Tap Art Space à Montréal. Elle est actuellement récipiendaire d'une bourse de recherche et création du Conseil des arts du Canada. Donc, avec ça, j'ai passé la parole à Shanie.
Bonjour, hi everyone. I think I'm going to speak in English just because I know that a bunch of you speak English. And so hopefully that won't upset anyone too much. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right. Does everyone see it? Yeah. Okay. Well, first, thank you, Roberto, for your presentation. That was really fun. Okay, can everyone hear me, right? Yeah, okay, cool. I just didn't get reaction and okay. Well, so I started this project when I'm in the small space at Clark right now. The show is called iPhone Ritual. And I started this project around 2019. So right when I got out of grad school, I was going through what a lot of my friends called the post-MFA syndrome, which is some form of depression that you started experiencing after going through grad school. And like it involves like existential crisis kind of symptoms. So like I was reevaluating my life choices and wondering what was next for me. I was living in the US at the time. Also, I was wondering if I wanted to come back. And so I just stopped doing art for a little bit. I just needed to like settle down and be inside myself for a little bit. And so I just got really into silence and meditating and relaxing. And I was using a bunch of incense. And at one point I decided to make my own incense. I like researched the materials and recipes. And so incense is made with like a base, a binder, and aromas, and you can combine them as you wish. It's like the ratio that really matters. So I became really obsessed and like passionate about the process of it, and I started to just make a bunch of incense cones for myself, and yeah, have some really quiet times. And then my artist brain started to kick back in, and I got really interested in the ashes and in this is like a burnt out cone. It's just the beautiful shade of it and the little resin that's being released at the end of a burn. And then so I started to imagine myself incorporating incense into my art practice and using it as a material for my sculptures. And so I decided to cast some cell phones out of it. I've been using cell phones in my practice for a little bit. I usually select objects that become like motifs for me to use and recuperate over and over, and they become kind of forms of their own. So here's a Motorola flip phone. Here's another one. And so when I got back from Texas in January 2021. And I found a box containing a bunch of my personal old cell phones that I've owned. And it felt pretty natural for me to use these phones instead of just using random phones. First of all, like the cohabitation of a phone and instance is like kind of an odd one. There's like a little layer of humor, I guess, inserted into it. But I'm trying to come at it with not too much irony, but more sincerity. And I guess I would explain it in the sense that I feel like truly close to all of these phones. Like they've all been my personal objects, and I have like specific memories with each one of them. This one was my Sony Ericsson 5 megapixel that I owned when I was in grade 5 of high school, and I ended up forgetting it in the rain. Had a pretty sad ending. And so here's a collection of the phones. And I inserted an alarm clock in the show as well. It's just the alarm clock to me kind of evokes the sleep time. And so I just liked to, I think about the phones as like sort of portals, like in times of isolation, like we've all experienced, they like serve as portal to be connected with one another, but also they can like suck us into like a more dreadful experience of the world. So they're not like good or bad, they're just like some sort of window, and they can shed light or darkness, I guess. And so here's the phone burning. And so the fact that each of these objects can just vanish into ashes was really important and interesting to me. It just activated the piece in a way that felt cohesive to my usual art practice. And so here are some examples of the phone being burned. Here's another one. And so it still kept like this mesmerizing quality that the initial incense cone had for me, but now it was like coupled with the tactile feeling I have when I see a phone and I just want to grab it and look at it. So here's the first experiment I made in terms of like plinth or like this display device. And I have one in the show. I have pictures of the show too, but here's another one. And here's a wall piece. I have a similar one in the show, but this is like my first experiment with the phones on the wall metal device. I like to use these like steel pieces because they like they bring the object more into the room, and they like points out to the architecture. And then I use ball chain on this one because I got really, ball chain is like the little beaded curtain that's kind of hanging from this piece, and it's usually hanging off of a drain, like a bathtub drain knob. And so I just got really obsessed with drains for a little bit. And so I started collecting pictures of drains from spaces that were meaningful to me. And from this collection of drains, this one is my personal bathtub drain. And in the past, year and a half, I took an incredible amount of baths. It was a very therapeutic ritual for me to take baths, and so I did this piece to sort of give an homage to my bath. But that's a piece from the series that's not in the show, but I have I'm coming to the piece that's in the show with this one. Here's some details of the piece. It's covered. This one is covered with coated with red wine. That's what's giving the color. This one is kind of becoming some sort of web. And this one is the drain that is in the show. And it's becoming that one. So it's got some sort of, I was really into all of the lines that are splitting it. It made me think of like a zodiac calendar or something like that. So they all end up receiving different quality once they're once they're turned into drawing. And the process to make these pieces, I first of all, I draw them digitally, and then I CNC route them with a CNC router. Then I assemble them, and I carve them by hand because the texture of the hand is really important. Well, not the hand, but like hand tools. The texture of the hand giving back to the piece that was like digitally processed is really important to me. And then the final pieces that are in the show and are like maybe the most important pieces of the show are the clay pieces. And I guess during the past year, I've just started working with clay a lot. The first month of the pandemic, me and my roommates turned our living room into a pottery studio because we had access to a kiln and nothing else because everything else was closed. And so we just spent entire afternoon doing pottery with no other goal than to like chill and relax and support each other. And it was pretty great, but I ended up being really, really into working with clay. And so I was really into the give and release and the elasticity of the material and how it can keep the finger touch if you let it. And so these are the pieces that are in the show. They're in my studio in this pictures. And they're all hand built pretty intuitively. They keep the fingerprints on them, but also some of them have like more organic shapes, and some of them have more like sturdy, referring to like human construction kind of shapes. But all of them are incense holder, and since they're ceramic, they're resistant to fire. So these are basically my plinths for the phones. That's how I decided to display the phones on those ceramic pieces. And that's these are the pieces in the space with the metal pieces that are, there's the one that is doing floor to ceiling is interacting pretty nicely with the ceiling lights and the architecture. Your other angles. And I like to use these metal display just to drop my objects like they would be on like a countertop or like my nightstand table in my bedroom. And all of the black phones are made of exclusively charcoal. And so, well, since it's inside a building, the fully incense phone cannot be burned indoor because it's just an insane amount of smoke. But the charcoal phone can totally be burned inside of the gallery. And I've been burning this phone. Here's the ashes. think it's really pretty. This is my last one. This one is a self-portrait and is the first piece I made of the show. It's a fountain that's powered with some phone chargers, some power banks, and it's got some very nervous hand scratches on the surface. It's a concrete slab, and here I have a picture. I really like studio shots. I have a picture of the mold I made to make this piece. So that's the negative of the fountain. And yeah, I guess that would be it for my slideshow.
Thank you so much, Shanie, for sharing your work with us. And again, if people have questions, feel free to raise your hand or put them in the chat. But Shanie, yeah, I found your work like to be like really like touching, or what's the word I'm looking for? Like, I guess very. I mean, I think we can all find it very relatable, especially with in terms of the phones and how, you know, our phones are like such a, like, we have kind of become cyborgs through our connections to our phones, as you know, they're always on us, and it kind of like brings us into this like other space of like, I am, you know, my own person, but then with the phone I have the whole internet, and that, you know, like changes how I'm able to like interact with the world, and yeah, kind of like where I'm putting my thoughts or my focus. And I wanted to share with you my high school cell phone because I found it.
Yes.
And I was like just charging it. I'm not sure if it's gonna come alive, but I don't think so. But it's this little blue LG flip phone. Yeah, that I used like throughout high school, and I'm like, hello. The drama of like flipping a phone, it's like so good.
Oh wow. It looks like those razors, like Motorola razor, but I guess it's an LG, you said.
No, yeah, it's an LG something. But yeah, I like the color, and I was like,
great.
Yeah, this feels like me.
It feels nostalgic, doesn't it, to like hold this?
Yeah, and just like looking at how like these old buttons, like I'm not sure if you can see it. I'm like, my beauty girl, hello, can you see it? Like with those like old school numbers, and I remember just like trying to like type my name, and it takes like forever. And my parents would also have like really old phones until like recently, and they would text me whole novels like dear son, like comma, line break. Today I went to the store. I'm wondering if you would like us to purchase. I'm like, why? This is too much. And just the time it would take to like be on your phone, just like typing away on T9. Like it just like really seeing these old phones like with all the individual like buttons, like I think for me really evoked like the sense of like touch that is like very apparent in the other works, especially self-portrait and all of the clay pieces. So that was not a question. That was just that was just me talking. But I'm wondering if you could tell. Thank you. But yeah, like you had shared this like really great story before when we were talking about like being in the bath and like hearing the sounds of the bath. Can you tell us a little bit more about how that like translate through to self-portrait?
Well, so the story, I think the story I told you before was how I decided to make how I became obsessed with the drains. I just have a really sticky mind. Like I just get fixated on some things, and the drains started with one of my usual bat sessions, and I go like all in with my bat. Like I have like salts in there, and I have candles, and I burned something that smells nice. And so I was like just relaxing, and I was like letting myself sink under the level of the water, and with the volume of my body and the mass of my body going under the water level would rise and would start going through the drain to evacuate and not spill. And that sound of the water going through the drain it just sounds like very guttural, like a very like grave sound. And it just like it just was like somehow very relaxing, and made me and like I guess enhance my my relaxation state. And so, yeah, and I guess if it can translate to the self-portrait piece, is just, I just really feel involved in all these pieces. Like I don't come at it from a outsider perspective. Like I feel like I'm in the pieces in a way. Like that my hand touches in there, and I don't want to like clean it out. It's there and it's my phone. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think also like really comes across in like the scents that you chose, right? And how those like the roses or rosemary came from like the places that like where you're living, as opposed to
Mm-hmm.
wanting to like manufacture the kind of like pre-made incense. Because I like growing up, my family also like burned a lot of incense, and it like smelled. I never particularly enjoyed because to me it just smelled like burnt, and I was like, this isn't nice. Like I don't I don't like this. Um, but then I but then I really appreciate the incenses that you had made because I felt like they were like connected to an actual place and they had meaning and like they were a different sense. But do you maybe want to tell us a little bit more about like the sense you chose and like the kind of like feeling reflections, or how was it working with like the individual materials? So did you find there was like a material difference in the different instances, like the charcoal versus like the rosemary?
Yeah. Well, I've been working with like a vast like um just a vast array of different materials, for instance, like just in my incense making practice, if you want. But for like how I selected the piece for this show, like usually I like, if I can, to just recycle material or like harvest them myself. That's just the most, like the final product, I just feel good about it way more. So well, the rosemary is like my favorite material. It's in most of the pieces, and it's my favorite material that I chose in Texas. Well, I was living in Texas for the past almost 4 years, and in Austin, there's just so much vegetation, and the rosemary bush are just gigantic. Like I saw some rosemary bush that were as big as a car. Like they're just enormous. And so I would just go out, and they were everywhere. So I would just go, like it's dinner time and I need rosemary. I'm going out on the street with scissors and I'm clipping something from a neighbor. Like it's just, they were everywhere. So rosemary was just very present in my life for the past 4 years, and it smells so good. It's delicious to eat, and it just smells really good when it's burnt. And the rose is just like such an iconic, romantic, loving, sweet fragrance, and that's why I picked it. And the other materials were given while I collected them. Like I wouldn't necessarily want to buy wood to make these, like if I have access to other wood. So the white oak was collected from my studio neighbor. He's a woodworker, and so it was in his dust collector. He was gonna trash it, and I was like, whoa, this is gold, it's white oak, it's amazing. So I collected it. Same with the cedar. It's sourced from my dad, who I helped him build a patio deck for his cabin, and I collected the wood chippings from that. And now they're in the gallery. That's also his sister piece of wood, is also a patio deck.
Nice. Yeah, I really like this, like how there's sort of this theme of like sustainability that comes across also in the work, right? The fact that these were like your own cell phones that you had used, that you were like, yeah, have been bringing things like across places, right? From like Austin to Montreal is like, not a, it's not a short distance to really be like bringing all these things and reusing them. And then also that like, not only are the materials in, not only are the materials like used in the exhibit, like the incense in this mode of transition, but also like you were in a mode of transition between like the MFA, post MFA, and then like now. So like, yeah, I'm wondering, how are you doing in your post MFA syndrome? Is that over? Like, are you still in the transition, or have you moved on to the next thing?
I would say my post MFA syndrome was probably over because it was in 2019, but like 2020 started the pandemic, and I moved in at the end of 2020. I was moving, so it was still very transitory. I moved back maybe 8 months ago from Texas, and so I feel still very I'm like starting to feel more grounded now with life, and it feels pretty good. But I feel like my post MFA syndrome was like really stretched out and really long, but I feel out of it now. Glad.
I feel glad. I'm like about to finish my MA, and then I'm ready though. I don't think I'm gonna have a post syndrome. I think I'm just gonna. I think I had an MA syndrome where I was like, I'm here and I don't know why. I have regrets.
Well, it's just the time that follows is just so confusing. It's not just depression, it's just confusion. It's like, why did I do this? Who am I? What's happening now?
Yeah, I think a lot of us can relate. Yeah, just agreeing to what Fanny's wrote in the chat. Thank you so much, Shanie. If there are no more questions, we will move on to present NRO.
Yes, thank you so much, Prakash.